The media report filed by Padma Rao for India's World is One News claims that Saudi Arabia reportedly trained and has been dispatching English-speaking Wahhabi speakers around the world, and South Asia is the most attractive region since it is inclusive of a huge Muslim community.
There's an uneasy pall of calm over the east coast and the central mountains of Sri Lanka.
It states that most of the international media are painting exaggerated pictures of bloodthirsty Sinhalese and victimized Muslims, but they discovered a slightly different picture.
Religions, and what we're discovering paints a slightly different picture. It is true that Sinhalese intolerance is on the rise, and this time it's not Sri Lanka's Tamils who are the targets, but the country's nearly 2 million Muslims.
The report adds that there can be no justification for violence, but one must examine the root cause of the distrust of Muslims in Sri Lanka since 2009.
And that root cause lies in the alarming spread of Wahhabism among one of the most tolerant and peaceful Muslim communities in the world, that of Sri Lanka.
It goes on to say that some of the controversial speakers trained and dispatched by Saudi Arabia reportedly include Ismail Menk, Zakir Naik, and Tariq Jamil. Menk has been banned in the United Kingdom and Singapore, while Zakir Naik is in India's most wanted list.
Analysts say that Sinhalese intolerance is on the rise primarily because of the changes noticed in traditionally tolerant Muslim neighbours.
According to Rao's report, there are 749 madrasas in Sri Lanka and one Islamic university, moreover claiming that 90% of Sri Lanka's mosques are in the clutches of Wahhabi preachers and that 33 Sri Lankan Muslims are reported to have joined Islamic State.
There is a rise, and this is what analysts in Sri Lanka have been telling us.
However, when contacted for their views, Sri Lankan experts had this to say on the media report.
The argument that at the root of anti-Muslim violence in this country is the rise of Wahhabism in the Muslim community is not one that I agree with at all. I think this argument is used quite often by sympathizers and apologists of the intolerance, indeed, sadly, even of the violence, to detract from what the real causes are. No doubt, an increase in Wahhabism fuels the Islamophobia that we have in the country. But I think if one looks at the violence, the main reasons are largely economic, which are then fueled, exacerbated, and reinforced by various cultural and religious arguments of one kind or another. Perhaps it is very much the fear of the unknown, the Goebbelsian type of propaganda about this country fast becoming a Muslim majority country, the ridiculous arguments about infertility pills and all of that suggest that there is a very organized group of people who are concerned with a multi-ethnic, multi-religious Sri Lanka. The government of the day needs to give out a vision of this Sri Lanka as being multi-ethnic and multi-religious and will be protected and defended as such, and that the full force of the law will be brought to bear upon them without fear or favor. The rise of Wahhabism within the Muslim community in this country is something that first and foremost needs to be dealt with from within the Muslim community. And it is indeed incumbent on them to deal with any signs of extremism, as it is indeed incumbent on any religious or ethnic community within this country to do likewise. We mustn't detract from the cardinal fundamental question: do we or do we not want a multi-religious and multi-ethnic Sri Lanka? And are we not going to bring the full force of the law of the land to bear on those who do not want it? We need to act fast and fearlessly.
Because one has to be careful to see that there are regional and international players with international and regional agendas try to create diversions of the real cause and the real problem amongst Sri Lankans. Of course, we need to address the root cause, but to exaggerate that Sri Lankan Muslims is somewhere close to any sort of insurgency is absolute rubbish and nonsense. In the meantime, Sri Lankan's Muslim has a duty to resurrect their Sri Lankan culture, Muslim subculture which we have been inheriting, because alienating our own culture during the last few years played into the hands of extremists who are hell-bent on creating problems for the Muslims. We need not to go after anybody else's culture. Culture is different, ethnicity, religion is different. Our nationality is Sri Lankan. Having said so, some of the recent reports painting a very bleak picture about certain well-known Islamic priests who have come to Sri Lanka probably once a year is absolutely no basis at all. They never ever advocate any sorts of hardlining. Some of the well-known international secret services and intelligence agencies are in work in Sri Lanka. Some of the elections, they have privately and also publicly proclaimed they were involved in certain regime changes which had taken place in Sri Lanka. So they are hell-bent on create division between the communities in Sri Lanka so that instability of the region and instability of the country, we should not play into this agenda.